Happy holidays. In my last video, I was kind of just reading off about the rape of Persephone as Pluto and Venus were conjoined in the skies. You know, I got some feedback that, like, I should have expanded more, and in general, just like, uh, it was just kind of random that I was just reading one random passage and making that my video. So I wanted to do this video to talk a little bit about um, what Venus Pluto means. So Venus represents the things we value. And at that time, Venus was like moving directly, like as planets move directly, and it was meeting Pluto on the way, and they were both at the same position at 26 Capricorn. So since then, like Venus has retrograded, which means that it's moving backwards now. And it just happens to be that during Christmas this year, December 25th, 2021, that Venus came back and met that Pluto again on that day. And so it's within orb right now. Like they're very close to each other right now, but this is a Venus that's retrograde rather than the Venus that's direct. And so whenever a planet moves retrograde, remember it's forcing us to internalize the values of whatever that planet represents. And Venus represents beauty, appreciation of like whatever you value in your life. And that's already kind of been going through a shift, maybe because Uranus is in Taurus right now, and Taurus is ruled by Venus. So there's already a shift in what we value as a community and a society. But right now you might be feeling it intensely with whatever sector of your chart it's going through. Like for me, example, it's my fourth house of home and family, and there has been some strong things that have been going on, but like ultimately it's going to be for the better. So just keep that in mind if you're going through a tough time right now. So let me go, and I'm going again. This book, the Howard Sasportas, The Gods of Change. I'm going to first start off by reading what the following section to what I read the last time. So it's Pluto the Balancer. In the Persephone myth, Aphrodite used Pluto to achieve her ends, to take the innocent and naive maiden Cori and initiate her into another side of life. In this sense, Pluto acts as a balancer. Wherever this planet is transiting in the chart is where we are shown another dimension of ourselves, a side we have ignored or denied. If we are too identified with the masculine or animist principle, which is like power, assertion, and outer achievement, a Pluto transit may strip us of our power and drive in the name of putting us more in touch with the feminine side of life, the anima, the realm of soul, feelings, and relationship. If we are overly identified with the anima and are mainly deriving our identity through what another person needs or wants us to be, then Pluto may rob us of that relationship so that we are forced to find out who we are in our own right. If we have grown inflated in any way, believing we are a god or a superhuman being, Pluto transits will cut us down to size. If we have swallowed whole the values of our culture and society, Pluto will confront us with choices and temptations that lead us away from the norm and show us, to our shock and surprise, other sides of our nature and other ways of conducting life, which are radically different from those that parents or society have tried to instill in us. Pluto is the avenger of natural law. Every living thing has its place and its limits. If we step too far beyond these limits, a major Pluto transit will bring the Furies upon us. Pluto may do this through illness, where pain and disease are the messengers informing us that something has gone awry, that we are out of balance in some way. If we have not heeded any of its earlier warnings, Pluto will use the body to make us listen. Illness may be the only avenue open to Pluto to break us down and change us. Sickness draws the toxins and poisons hidden in us to the surface so they can be eliminated and our body cleansed. In some cases, a cleansing illness of this sort can accompany or facilitate the psychological regeneration of long-standing emotional complexes and disorders. So that's talking about kind of how Pluto, remember like Persephone's husband in the underworld, he um, he has to act through us somehow in order to enforce change. Because, Pluto actually represents, in some ways, it represents our soul's deepest desires, like why we're here in the first place. And so if you think about it like that, it's kind of like it has certain goals and objectives that um, it needs to accomplish here on Earth. And when we're stuck in certain patterns, as we all get stuck in, it becomes like it's like we don't want change. We don't want to really work on that stuff because we like this, whatever this is, whether it's a person or whatever our attachment is at the time. So sometimes Pluto's transits can be rough because they, you know, bring us back to like what we're here for, and it can be intense times. So that's Pluto the Balancer. There's this other myth from about just like I went over the Persephone and myth. There's another myth about Inanna and Ereshkigal, which is much older. It's goes back to the third millennium BC. I'll read this at another time. Maybe when Venus is back, because Venus is moving backwards right now. It's going to move again to it's going to station direct, and then it's going to meet Pluto again for a third time. And by that time, hopefully, we have our stuff figured out, and so it can be smoother. But in 2022, things are going to be lighter because right now we're facing the heavier parts of these things. So just if you're going through tough times right now, just keep that in mind. Things will be lighter and much more to our favor in 2022. There's another transit that's happening at the end of this month, which is Jupiter is moving into Pisces. It's one of its homes because Jupiter was a traditional ruler of Pisces. And so this is Jupiter's more yin home, like Sagittarius is Jupiter's other home, which is much more yang. With this home, it's more about emotional intelligence. Pisces is more about that, but that's for another time. Let's get on to, today I wanted to talk about the specific section in this book that deals with Pluto-Venus. Just so you have a better idea and can go away with this video with a little better idea about what Pluto-Venus is and how to deal with this transit. Remember, this is a mundane transit, so it's happening for all of us. It might be triggering other planets in your chart, but this is just happening outside for all of us. This isn't necessarily Pluto on. It has the same themes as if Pluto was on your Venus, transiting your Venus. So, but just think about it, this is happening for the world, so we're all kind of feeling this. So, anyways, let me start this. So, the planet Venus is linked to three basic spheres of life: relationships, creativity, and values. So, relationships, creativity, and values. When transiting Pluto makes an aspect to natal Venus, it is within these three areas that change, disruption, or transformation are most likely to occur. We'll examine each separately. In terms of relationships issues, Pluto-Venus transits manifest in a number of different ways. If we are already married or involved in an important relationship, transiting Pluto will test the strength or truth of the union, forcing us to look at what is wrong in the relationship. Things we have been unhappy about in the partnership but have never acted on or paid much attention to, make themselves felt with such an intensity that they have to be acknowledged and confronted. For instance, a woman came to see me when Pluto was squaring her natal Venus. Squares are 90 degrees, and so they're another angle of tension. It's still a Pluto-Venus relationship because they're actually, that's a point of when it's time to make a change, like a square. But right now there's a conjunction because they're both occupying the same position. So, when a woman came to see me when Pluto was squaring her natal Venus, for years she had been sexually frustrated in her marriage, but she kept pushing aside her dissatisfaction. The relationship worked well in so many other ways that she tried to ignore the sexual problems. However, with Pluto square her Venus, she could no longer contain her frustration, although she was afraid to tell her husband and risk stirring trouble between them. In the end, she found the courage to share her feelings with him, and they were able to work through their sexual problems. As a general rule, if we can face and successfully resolve the kinds of concerns that Pluto raises when it aspects Venus by transit, there's a good possibility that the relationship will deepen and grow stronger as a result. What is potentially undermining and threatening is brought to the surface and cleared. In this way, Pluto cleanses Venus and purifies the relationship. The relationship dies as it has been and is reborn onto a whole new level or way of being. In some cases, however, a Pluto transit to Venus, even the transiting trine or sextile, which are much more harmonious angles, could stir up difficulties or issues which prove insurmountable. Like normally they're much more beneficial and like more easily harmoniously flowing. But this is saying that even in those cases, like Pluto and Venus is really strong, so you're gonna feel it. So like sometimes even those could bring up difficulties, which just speaks to how strong that relationship is. Pluto may reveal such deep-seated differences that even with the best intentions, the union cannot survive. One or the other of the partners may be unwilling to admit to the problems in the relationship or may simply be unable to change his or her habitual pattern of relating. If Pluto is making a conjunction or square by transit to our Venus, we are often the ones that initiates the breakup. If transiting Pluto is opposing our Venus, then the other person may end the relationship. However, in practice, even with a transiting conjunction or square, it may be the partner who walks out or finishes things. As with any of the transits of the outer planets to Venus, we will meet change or disruption by choice or by coercion. If we are unwilling to face the truth in a relationship or are reluctant to deal with problems that need to be brought to the surface, then our partner may act in a way which forces us to confront what we have been avoiding or denying. A Pluto transit to Venus could also indicate a partner or loved one experiencing a very difficult and challenging phase of life. He or she may fall ill, or there could be serious psychological troubles or problems with work. In these cases, we are put through tests and changes as a result of what the partner is facing. In our efforts to support the other person, we may find the resources in ourselves we didn't even know we had. Finally, in some instances, a Pluto transit to Venus coincides with the actual death of a partner. If it is the relationship itself which dies under this transit, it will need to be mourned in the same way we would grieve for a person who has died. When Pluto transits Venus, present relationship problems act as a catalyst to awaken deep-seated emotional complexes left over from childhood. For example, in fact, I'm going to read that again just because I feel like that's important to understand here. When Pluto transits Venus, present relationship problems act as a catalyst to awaken deep-seated emotional complexes left over from childhood. For example, if we discover that our partner is having an affair, we will not only feel the hurt and betrayal associated with the immediate situation, but we will reconnect to emotions still lurking inside us from infancy when we were threatened by our caretaker paying more attention to another person. Because as a child, our life depends on having someone there to take care of us. Not being the central focus of our caretaker's attention is very frightening and gives rise to fears of being neglected, abandoned, or left to die. These early life insecurities and traumas can be triggered again by our present partner's infidelity. This is not to say that the immediate situation of a partner's indiscretions isn't upsetting in itself, because that deserves its own kind of thing. We have been tricked, deceived, and let down, and this alone will provoke strong reactions. But these natural responses increase in complexity and intensity when they become entangled with childhood fears of abandonment and death. Most likely, as an adult, our actual physical survival doesn't depend on our partner's fidelity, and yet the frightened child who lives inside us will react to our mate's unfaithfulness as if our lives were really at stake. If this is the case, it's understandable that our reactions to the situation are going to be more fraught and extreme. We even may feel like murdering our partner or the other person involved. The young child who fantasizes destroying a bad parent isn't capable of carrying through the act, but the adult whose inner child is stirred in this way is physically mature enough to turn destructive fantasies into reality. So be careful. Transiting Pluto to Venus in itself probably wouldn't evoke a reaction ferocious enough to lead to murder or violence, but if this transit or another significant one like happening at the same time, like for example, if it also activates your natal Mars, then it might provide the necessary impetus to lead to such extremes. Actually taking it this far, although it happens fortunately not the norm, so like, but it still leaves us with the question of what we can learn from these situations. What value is there in having our unresolved infantile complexes brought to the surface? It is only through reconnecting to complexes buried in our unconscious that they can be reclaimed and eventually transformed. The present difficulties with a partner that occurred during a Pluto transit to Venus serve to bring these complexes to the fore. Once they are brought to the surface level of awareness, they can be more fully explored, which is the first step towards working productively with them. Once freed, the energy trapped within a complex can be reintegrated into the psyche in more constructive ways. Counseling, therapy, meditation, or certain forms of healing, such as homeopathy, Bach flower remedies, acupuncture, etc., will aid the process. We have been discussing Pluto-Venus transits in terms of a partner arousing our jealousy and anger. However, in many instances, I have seen these transits, especially when Pluto opposes Venus, manifest in our being on the receiving end of someone else's rage and jealousy. We may be the one who is threatening the existing relationship, and in doing so, act as the catalyst to activate our partner's jealousy, envy, or rage. Even if we are completely innocent, like our partner might be imagining that we are engaged in some kind of deceit and read his or her worst suspicions into some innocuous behavior on our part. When Pluto transits Venus, it asks that we encounter intense emotions and feelings through love and relationship. If it is not our own feelings that are stirred, we will then find ourselves the target for someone else's. Again, we must ask ourselves, why have we attracted such a situation? Is there any truth to our partner's accusations? If so, what needs to be looked at and discussed in the relationship? Or are we somehow provoking a partner to express and act out feelings inside ourselves which we have disowned and projected? Whether or not we are already involved in a relationship, Pluto-Venus transits could bring a new person into our lives for whom we feel a strong, irresistible attraction. Something deep is touched, and there may be little choice but to go with our feelings, even if it means endangering an existing partnership. With Uranus-Venus transits, a new relationship could serve as a catalyst to change our lives in some way and then end as suddenly as it began. So that would be Uranus-Venus. With Neptune-Venus transits, a new relationship could let us down and disintegrate within a number of years. So those are two other outer planets, and it's talking about like just some worst case scenarios for those. It's not always going to be those for that. But if a new relationship develops under a Pluto-Venus transit, there is more likelihood it will last and replace an already existing one. The kind of person we fall for under these transits often is someone whose natal chart shows the planet Pluto or the sign Scorpio prominently configured. Given the strong feeling nature of such a person, it's not surprising that these relationships are very intense and call for more commitment and involvement than a partnership that develops when Uranus or Neptune are transiting an aspect of Venus. Pluto transits to Venus are at times of discovery. We are meant to learn about parts of ourselves we haven't been fully in touch with before. For a young person who is new to the whole sphere of relationships, this transit could mean a fiery, passionate, all-consuming involvement and an initiation into the arena of sex and intimacy. For someone who has had previous experience of relationships, there's still something new, exciting, and more complete about a partnership which has begun when Pluto is affecting Venus. In either case, the relationship is likely to stir parts of us that other relationships have not touched and to arouse our deepest feelings, emotions, and complexes. Those of us who have prided ourselves on our calm, rational, and controlled nature may be in for a surprise. If we are involved in artistic or creative outlets, these also will be affected by Pluto transits to Venus. In some instances, the medium in which we are accustomed to work changes. Actors turn to directing. Nonfiction writers take up fiction. And dancers become choreographers. The medium may remain the same, but the message could alter significantly, reflecting a major shift in philosophy or belief system taking place at this time. In a few cases, a Pluto-Venus transit has coincided with a person abandoning his or her career in a creative field in order to pursue some other kind of profession. But it is more likely that creative people will experience an increase in artistic inspiration under Pluto-Venus transits. An idea, image, or theme totally absorbs them, and they are obsessed with giving it some form of expression. Anything creative which is worked on at this time will stir powerful emotions and force artists to face deep complexes or hitherto buried and unresolved feelings. So that's another thing that, you know, if you're experiencing any of these things, or you're feeling so intensely, find some creative outlet to kind of give that part of your being expression, because it needs to be heard. And I mean, when I read when we discuss the Inanna myth, like we'll see exactly how, like, there's so many parts of our being that we just repress, and it's so unhealthy to repress, because, like, as this even said, when you repress, you're basically distorting that energy. It's still there, but it'll have to manifest in like toxic ways, and that's what results in like physical sickness, is because we repress that, like, what we want, like we want to say it, like we desire it. So we need to find a way to give that an outlet instead of just repressing it and just like saying this is bad, like punishing ourselves, because that eventually grows and has its own thing. It wants, and it's going to be harder. Like, it's going to be, the more you try to repress it, the worse it could become, and you don't want that. So take this to mean, like, try to get in touch with some creative thing that you can do to channel that energy. Anyways, however, before new creative inspiration is tapped, it may be necessary to go through a period in which our creativity is apparently blocked or stifled. This is because the energy normally used to drive the creative process has been temporarily appropriated by the psyche for other reasons, probably to effect and support important psychological changes that need to take place at this time. In other words, our libidinal energy turns inward, and we have less at our disposal to continue creating in our usual fashion. And I just want to say about this, like, this is relevant because Venus is currently retrograde. And remember, I was saying that, like, all those things that we value and like appreciate, it's being internalized right now. So some of you might be going through this right now where you feel like a creative block, and that's okay, because you need rest. Like, you can have like lots of periods of like creativity and production, but then you also need rest to recover from that. And so, like, it's okay if this is happening with you right now and you just feel like blocked yourself. Do something else that, like, think about your own value system, and you can use that time productively for other things now that you have this awareness. So it's best, it says, continuing, it's best just to go with this process. Once the inner changes have been effected, a new influx of creative energy will be available, and the whole period can be looked back upon as a necessary pre-creative depression. So that you might look back at this period and be like, oh, Venus was retrograde, and I was like, I couldn't produce what I normally produce, but something else happened then that, like, allowed me to, like, connect the dots, and therefore, something new was birthed in my creation. Unfortunately, many people frightened and disturbed by a block of this kind may try to force themselves to carry on working during this period, only to find that the end results are far from satisfactory. Others may turn to alcohol or drugs as a way of soothing their frustrations, or in the hope that these substances will somehow renew their inspiration. While it's quite natural and even a part of the process to fight a creative block in this manner, we will serve our work best by flowing with a temporary lull in creativity. A non-productive phase may be necessary in order to give the psyche the time and space needed to effect the changes dictated by the deeper levels of the unconscious at this time. The planet Venus is also associated with the whole issue of values. What it is we value, find beautiful, or hold dear in life. The value of something is very often determined by its financial worth. Therefore, Venus is traditionally linked with money and wealth. Accordingly, a Pluto transit to Venus could change our financial status, depending on the nature of the transiting aspect, trine, square, or opposition, etc., and other factors in the natal chart. Extreme reversals of fortune either way might occur at these times. More broadly, a Pluto transit to Venus often indicates a shift or change in our value system in general. What we previously valued, treasured, or hoped to gain no longer seems so worthwhile or attractive anymore. When Pluto transits Venus, our old values slowly fall away and die. And for a while, we may be left confused and uncertain, no longer sure what it is we really want or desire. An uncomfortable period could ensue during which we know what we don't want, but don't know what it is that we do want. And by the end of the transit, however, new values and desires will emerge to replace the old ones. So that's kind of on the note I was saying about like when Venus, it's going to go back to like 11 degrees Capricorn, I believe, and then it's going to station direct, and then it's going to like move forward again and come back to this point sometime next year. And by that time, things should be clear. They should be a lot clearer than they are now, and so just hang in there if you're going through like a rough time right now. I keep saying that, but yeah. So where was I? By the end of the transit, however, new values and desires will emerge to replace the old ones. Okay, so our value system dictates the kinds of choices we make in life. If we value money, we make choices for money. If we value freedom, we make choices which would lead to greater freedom. If we value security, we opt for whatever would give us more security. A change of values has a far-reaching effect. We may have achieved admirably in terms of our old value system, but if these things are no longer what we find fulfilling, then major adjustments have to be made. In this way, a Pluto transit to Venus can dramatically undermine the foundations on which much of our life has been built. Probably the most important and dramatic change we could experience under a Pluto-Venus transit is that of learning to love and value ourselves more. This is easier said than done, and usually involves having to explore our early life and those situations, people, and events that contributed to our forming a negative self-image in the first place. If we don't value ourselves, we are likely to make choices in life that don't make us very happy. If we come to love and respect ourselves for who we are, we will naturally make choices that reflect and support a healthy self-esteem. The kinds of crises associated with Pluto-Venus transits are far from easy, but if in the end these enable us to find a greater sense of our own value, our struggles would certainly not have been in vain. So that's the Pluto-Venus section of this book. I hope this kind of, just reading that, it gives you a little bit better sense of purpose on what this Pluto-Venus means, and like, if you're going through rough times, how you can relate that to what's going on in the skies right now, because they have a very important message. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for taking the time to hear me, listen to me here, and you can like and subscribe if you want. I'm probably gonna start posting more videos about these kinds of things, and like what's coming up in 2022, and as I said, things might be rough right now, and if you need the alone time, take it. Like, just take a break from what you normally like do for like pleasure and value, like whether it's in the realm of relationships, or even like, because we're all in our relationships with ourselves too. It's not just having a partner, it's having our own relationship to our own self, and so working on that's always something that can be worked on and like reflected on and stuff. So I thank you for taking that time again, for listening to this, and I wish you a very happy holidays to you and your family and your loved ones, and I hope you have a great 2022 New Year, if you're doing anything for New Year. But yeah, so thanks again. Until next time.